Okay, this video should cover equilibrium and price controls, changes in market, equilibrium and prices at work. It's the last three subsections in the unit 3, demand, supply, and price. Hopefully you're understanding this well. Hopefully how I'm teaching you has been working out well. And let's just keep it going. Okay, so this slideshow, it will be linked in this document, and then at 3.8 and 3.9. If you ever want to look at it on your own, you are able to do so. This video will be linked in here, and it'll have the time after it's finished. Can't really figure out how long it's going to be until I make it. My little face, I'll put it down in the corner, but I think I'm going to try to point to things. That's why I put my face in this one, even though I realize my face kind of takes up a little bit more room than is useful. There goes my face. Where'd it go? Okay, anyway. Equilibrium and price control. All right, here's the main thing with equilibrium. Think of balance. Right, see how the pen is balanced on my finger? Well, too much one way, too much of the other, something falls. All right. You're going for the perfect price when you're going for equilibrium. And you're trying to balance supply, demand, costs, all those things to achieve that. All right, hence you have two balls on a little teeter-totter. If I want to show you something again, I'll put my face back up there. The big questions in this first subsection are what is equilibrium and what is disequilibrium. Equilibrium is when things are in balance, generally. Disequilibrium when things are out of balance. Equilibrium tends to be the ideal price. Disequilibrium means the price is off. Okay. How does the government step in to control prices? Well, similar to how they help with supply, subsidies, taxes, regulation. What role do prices have in the economy? Well, prices help self-manage the economy. Prices will fluctuate with returns. So I'm making this a little bigger. If you're ever making a slideshow and you're not happy with the size of something, my advice is change it, because you can change it. You have the power. Okay, let's see if there's anything worth looking at visually here. All right, supply and demand, it should be in balance to determine price. Supply and demand intersect to hit the ideal price. See the point, right, where you have intersection between supply and demand and price and quantity? That's the equilibrium point. It's only one point on both curves. So you have to do a little calculating to figure it out. Equilibrium is the point of balance between price and quantity, demand and supply curves. When they intersect, the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied are the same. I think it's a link to this particular point in the textbook. This link, I don't know if it actually works though. Demand function, supply function. That's what they're talking about with those letters. Okay, let's go ahead and write in the notes here. Sorry, got a little something in my throat after lunch. But it also feels like I need to go back and, oh, no, I'm good. We're on 57. The only word to write in, equilibrium. QD is quantity demanded. QS, quantity supplied. Hope that makes sense. You're going to see that repeatedly in this subsection, or section, I guess. At equilibrium, the market for a good is stable. Means things are in balance. The price and supply and the demand are somewhat reliable, though price will change the most, but demand and supply are just going to fluctuate a little. All right, now we can go look at the charts. Let's see if we can. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Well, it's not really linked, so let's not worry about it. If I want to put them in there, I'll put them in there. Otherwise, we'll get to it when we do the reading. disequilibrium. This is when quantity supplied and market price are not at equilibrium. They're not intersecting. Something's off. Either it's the supply, it's the demand, or it's the price. The intersection point is not matching up for whatever reason. Usually it's demand or supply. When you have excess demand, there's a shortage because the quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied. You just don't have enough. People want more than there is of something. There was a concern that there's going to be an excess demand for vaccines. Turns out there wasn't. There's actually a surplus. So it's just kind of an estimate. Usually it's a good estimate. Sometimes it's not. When you have an excess supply, you have a surplus. Too much. When you have too much, the quantity supplied is more than demand. A shortage is demonstrated below the equilibrium on our graph, while a surplus is above the equilibrium, or supply is above. Let's type these things in, and then we'll look at a visual representation of this. So disequilibrium. Now you might have been tempted to type it in already, but I think if you did that, you would have listened less well. I think you're better off typing in when I'm typing in, just typically after looking at the slide. I would just type whenever I'm typing, because you could always pause it, you could always go back, unless you're just watching in class, then you could always rewatch it. Anyway, let's look at this graph in more detail. So, when the supply is above the amount demanded, you have more of a product than you want. So, what will happen is price will tend to drop. When you have a shortage on something, you don't have enough on the supply, as consumers would demand, price will go up. At this price, you'll get this much. At this price, you'll get this much. Because there's a glut in the market, or there's a shortage in the market. And the market corrects quickly and responds to how people pay whenever it can. Okay, let's look at another graph. When the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, you're going to get a shift. So if P is $5, more people want something that's available at that particular price, eventually supply will rise to meet the demand, because people want to make profit. Profit motive pushes that, especially when prices are at their highest. At $5, quantity demanded is 9. At 26, you'd make a 25 lattes. You'd have a surplus of 16 extra lattes. That would cut in your profit. You don't want a surplus that big. You want the perfect amount of lattes. That's why people don't make them until people walk into the store. So you're always going to get to this point. But the price won't fluctuate as much. Definitely not on the day-to-day, because customers, everyone needs to recognize. So this is surplus, and quantity demanded is less than supply offered. So if 20 are offered, only 13 or 12 are asked for, then you get this overage. So what'll happen is they'll do a sale. Okay, well, what if we drop the cost to $3? Yeah, okay. Well, then more people are going to want one. There you go. And you're going to be less willing to supply it at that price because the return is less. So you'll have lesser surplus and then keep getting balance. So these numbers keep going up and down until you get the right number, especially in a new business. When the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, in other words, so the price is $1, and at that $1, it's 5 supplied. But at $1, people would want 21, but you don't make enough profit to make it worthwhile for the suppliers. So there's a shortage of 16 lattes at $1, but you're not going to get that many lattes at $1. But if you go up to $2, you get a little bit less of a shortage. At $3, you get the right number. So as you go up. Anyway, facing a shortage, sellers decide to raise the price, and then it lessens the shortage. If they go too far, then they'll get a surplus, and they'll keep going up and down until they get the right number, typically. Okay. How does the government intervene to step in to keep prices from getting out of control? They do a few things. One of those things is price ceilings. Say, look, I don't care what you want to charge. The limit is this. The limit is that. I know you're not going to like that. And I know you're going to come picket and yell at me because you like your economic freedom. But we need people to be able to live somewhere. And so we're going to have price ceilings. Typically, the main one people talk about is rent control. It's usually in areas where there's high real estate values, like San Francisco. You'll have rent-controlled areas. But here's the thing. Landlords try to get rent-controlled people out, and they do get them out, even though it's illegal, because they're trying to make more money. You'll also see price floors, minimum wage. Like, okay, yeah, you might be able to get people to do the work for even less, but we're not going to allow you to do that. Because when the people make more money, there'll be more money spent in the economy because poor people spend their money and rich people don't have to. Is government actions a good thing? Well, you're interfering with the market. So a pure laissez-faire would say both ceilings and floors are a mistake. You just let the market be what it's going to be. But we got real people, and we don't want people living on the streets. And we want people making enough that they can afford to live, to eat, to have clothes, to not be homeless. So all these things matter. So it's policy. But in pure economic terms, the only thing you have to look at is the graph and see if it's better or not. So let's look. And then we'll come back and answer the prompt on 59. So what does it say? How price ceilings affect market outcomes. The market says that the equilibrium price for an apartment rent should be $800. See, that's where it intersects. But the government sets a maximum price at $500. But they're not going to supply that many at $500. So the suppliers only provide 250. So you get a shortage of 150 rentals at that price point. Because 400 people would be willing to pay at that price. But only somewhere in the 325 range would pay at 800. No, because you're going to be supplying less rentals. So it doesn't really lessen the shortage. So let's go back. Rent controls do not lessen shortage because fewer rentals will be supplied at a given price. Too low of a price. Let's see what the next one says. And then we'll go back and fill in the notes, okay? Don't worry. Minimum wage. Is the price floor a good thing? Well, minimum wage does not affect highly skilled workers. They do affect teen workers. People like, you, like I was. Everyone's been a teen. Studies say that a 10% increase in the minimum wage will raise teen unemployment by 1 to 3%. Is that significant? I don't know. Market says that the equilibrium for wages and labor is $4. But the government sets the minimum wage at $5. This was years ago. A surplus of workers is created. So you get unemployment. You don't have an optimal number of workers at that rate. So there's less jobs available. So does it help in the long run? Suggesting is no. Um, but it's really may not. Minimum wage may actually lessen supply of jobs. So maybe not. But maybe at that price it's unfair to work anyway, so maybe it still works. All right, now let's go back in and fill in the notes because those were related. The equilibrium price at $800 is above the ceiling and therefore illegal. The ceiling causes a shortage because it doesn't allow the market to reach equilibrium. I totally mistyped because I was off my home keys. Back to it. I nailed it that time. Yeah, I think so. There, it looks good. Market says that the equivalent price for apartment rent should be $800, but the government sets a maximum price of $500. That's really so. It's the same thing. So I'm going to answer briefer. Because basically, you're going to have a lesser supply. So I know you're trying to get more affordable renters with price control, but you just get less rentals on the market at that price, unless the government's going to supply the rentals at that price and make an artificial equilibrium. Let's see what the cartoonist has to say about this. I have some good and bad news for you. The good, Democrats want to increase the minimum wage. Cool, man. And the bad? It's the kid. He'll be fired. I can't afford that. That's what the small businessman says. So then you don't even get the minimum wage. Oh, sad kid. Sad owner because he needs to work. All right. Let's go to the next topic. Changes in market equilibrium. These are related, so we'll do one mashed together quiz on these. Minimum wages. Minimum wage laws. We're 61. Yeah. 10% increase the minimum wage raises teen unemployment by 1 to 3%. Minimum wages rarely affects highly skilled workers unless the minimum wage goes so high as to get to near market levels. Market says that equilibrium for wages and labor, so a surplus of workers is created. So what you get when you have a surplus of workers, you get a thing called unemployment. And that's the deal. Now let's go to 62. Changes in market equilibrium. Okay. So you get a shift in supply because the market is trying to get to that equilibrium point. A change in supply leads to a new equilibrium price, but it also leads into a different number of items sold. You get the add sold to quantity sold too. All right, makes sense. If there's if you're getting a higher price, you're going to want to supply more at that price. If you're getting a lower price, you're going to want to provide less at that price. You're not going to make as much profit. But when you get an excess supply, basically producers will put it on sale because they don't want to hold the product. They're trying to make money out of the product. So if they never sell the item, even at a lower price, they're never going to make anything off it. Better to cut your losses and take a loss than to get zero. Anyway, it's basically a shift to the right with the supply curve. And even though you're going to have and that's going to result in a shifting equilibrium price as well. When you get a fall in supply, the supply is overall decreased, and the producers raise the prices, and um, demand's going to decrease, and then you get a supply shift to less because it's a higher price. At a higher price, you're going to get a new equilibrium point. The result is why did the producers raise the prices? They think they can get more because there's less supply. And if you think you can get more for something, you try to get more for it. Let's look at a supply shift. When you get a supply shift to the right, like here, you're looking at a surplus because you have too much at the original price. So if you drop the price, you get a new balance point or equilibrium point. So let's say a new pizza chain moves into the pizza market. Say Round Table comes to Lodi, and they set up shop within a mile or so of Smack Pie. They're going to shift the supply of pizza to the right because now there's more suppliers of pizza. What happens to the equilibrium? Well, the result is your quantity demanded goes up as the price goes down to reach new equilibrium, and then both Smack Pie and Round Table will be making less profit. Now, if you really want a slice of pizza after all these pizza slice examples, sorry. Yeah. So let's get a better look at this because it's kind of hard to see in small screen. So this is what we're looking at. The first price point, there's not enough supply. So you got to shift the supply to the right. And so you're getting a lower price point at equilibrium, even though demand will decrease a little bit as it moves forward because you have more supply. All right, that kind of makes sense. Put this to you. When you get a shift in demand, there's a shortage that's occurring somewhere. Because the amount that people want is less than the amount that is supplied. All right. Blank costs are financial and opportunity costs paid while buyers search for a good or service. I think you're talking transaction costs. Search costs, okay. Search cost is a transaction cost. The time you spend looking is time you're spending not doing something else. Your time is worth money because someone at some point in your life is going to pay you for your time, even though they might be paying you to use your time doing something you don't particularly enjoy. They're still valuing your time by giving you compensation for it. Basically, you get a demand shift to the left because when demand falls, suppliers cut the prices, then you get a new equilibrium. And you really have to look on, is the search worth that price? Let's see. Let's look at this warning sign. Warning. Due to a shortage of robots, workers here are human beings and may react unpredictably if abused. You're getting a shortage of labor. That's a joke on robots coming in and meeting the demand. When you get a demand shift, the shortage results in a higher price, because the demand is requesting more of the product at, and they want it so much that they'll pay a higher price for it, and the suppliers will keep producing more, especially at that higher price. So, like whether it's red roses during Valentine's Day or formal gowns in the spring, there's a shift to the right to meet demand. What happens to the equilibrium? Well, quantity supplied will go up as prices go up to reach the new equilibrium point. So right now what's happening, um, my neighbor has a landscaper that is doing something with some powered equipment and it's making some noise. I hope you can still hear me. I will try to speak up, uh, but it's kind of distracting. So sorry if I say something or do something wrong. I'm going to repeat something here. Just raise your hand and I will repeat in class. Okay, hopefully I can still keep it going. But basically, the response to the shortage is you get a new equilibrium, just like will happen if the response to surplus it will be a new equilibrium, and demand and supply will respond accordingly. Here, the shortage leads to higher prices, and sometimes those prior prices are permanent, sometimes they're temporary. But overall, interactions between buyers and sellers will always push the market back to equilibrium, especially when the economic systems stay out of the way. The market will self regulate. That's why they call it an invisible hand, because supply and demand will work to get to that optimum price. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes shorter, but it happens. Okay, let's see if we can draw this graph, and hopefully I can keep talking over the moped sounding power tool being used next door. I I'm just gonna throw an extra 10. Figure these practice things, because they're a hassle, are worth 10 points each. Whenever you have to do a graph, the graph by itself is 10 points. Filling in 20 blanks is worth the same. Let's say it's roughly like that. I don't know if it's exactly, but close enough. All right, let's go get a hair bigger. And then what do we do here? We're copying this area. And then we're going to hit turn. Get rid of that. Insert drawing, plus new. Put in the data. I like to throw the data in the graph because then I can refer to it without having to click back and forth anywhere. All right, draw a graph that demonstrates equilibrium. I'll try. Let's see. Boop. That's close enough. Let's change this. I think instead of being like that, let's make it letters, numbers, or something. Let's try letters. That's good. Look at that. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that. So it's not on there twice. And then I'm going to go back in and edit it because that wasn't done. Now I'm going to try to put a letter in where each thing should be. So I'll go to my text box. I'm going to hit cap locks because it's capital letters. The equilibrium point is draw on a graph a situation of excessive demand, shortage. Okay. So let's go ahead and put in some price and some rando numbers. Sorry, random numbers. Need to get too cute. Can't quite see that at the bottom. So just make it a little smaller, and I can see it. I know it's going to come out of my graph. That's what really matters to me. So I just start popping in some numbers here. Okay. Yeah, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. A little slower than I'm typing, and I didn't quite give it enough time. Do I know what numbers these refer to? No. Do I care? Double no. I'm just trying to have some points of reference. All right. Well, that's close enough. Excessive demand. So, this is my. Maybe these should be numbers. Yeah, these should be numbers because I'm going to want quantity demanded and quantity supplied in there. So, how do I change that? I just go in and switch it to numbers. It's not that hard. I just have to go back one. Why? Because I also need to add this box here on quantity demanded. And this one on quantity supplied. Good enough. Excessive demand. This would be somewhere over here where the demand is higher than people are willing to supply, even at the higher price. But eventually they're going to start making more of something. But I think it should go somewhere here. But if you start running out of space, like there's too much on one side, I can easily slap the number here, right? Good enough. 3. Diagraph a situation of excessive supply. Supply exceeds the demand. I think that would go here. What happens when the government sets a minimum wage? Okay. Minimum wage. You're going to get this line above the demand. I don't know why I can't make a line. I'm trying to just make a line here. There we go, got a line. Undo something, just hit Control Z. Move it, wait till you get the little arrows in all kinds of directions. This is what happens when you got minimum wage. So let's go ahead and put the number 4 next to that. Basically, you're not going to get as much supply at that price. If you have a price ceiling, instead you're going to get like here. That'll be the issue. And you're going to not get enough supply. You're going to end up getting a shortage that you've created because you mess with the market. The market will take getting messed with, but only for so long. All right. How about 6? Show this change in equilibrium with the supply shift. Okay. Supply shift. Just gotta put in another line. But this time I gotta rotate it. Let's say the supply shift increased. And we're gonna have more produced at the higher price. Woo! That's good times when you're the person. Okay. But generally, you're going to want to keep the curve at about the same angle. So that would be 6. So you're seeing this graph starting to get pretty complicated. There's all kinds of stuff happening. We've still got one more to do. We're going to have a quantity shift, quantity demanded shift. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to rotate our line again. Rotate, baby. That looks like roughly the right angle. Let's get this over here. Quantity demanded went up. That means there's a shortage. That's a demand shift. And that will be practice 7. I definitely think that's worth 10 points. So we'll be adding that to the total, whatever points that gives us. Done. That was a lot of work. But we're plotting 7 different points. It's not totally shocking that 7 different points results in a lot of work. All right, on the original notes, I'm going to change it to numbered. And that'll make it make sense for you when you get there. Okay. Now let's look at prices at work. Let's see how long this video is, though. 38:47. I'm going to keep going because it's one topic. Hopefully, we'll work it out. All right, the role of prices in a market economy. I don't think this one's all that long, so I think it should be okay. The Price is Right. If we get a few minutes in class, I have a Price is Right story. It's pretty cool, I think. The role of prices in a market economy. Let's type in what's here. Prices. Get rid of the caps. Prices help move land, labor, and capital, especially the right prices, into the hands of the producers and consumers of goods, of finished goods, into the hands of buyers. All right, same smell. Sure. It needs to be finished before buyers want it. But once it's finished, they're going to want it. And then they create efficient resource allocation. Some actually people write kits to put together themselves. Like a model is not really finished, or a jigsaw puzzle. Some of the fun is putting it together. Aside from that, people get, or if you're doing arts and crafts or sewing, that could be putting it together, or woodworking or anything like that. Some of the fun and entertainment is figuring out how to make it work. But generally, you're going to create, you're looking for finished goods and you're trying to create efficient resource allocation in a language that both consumers and producers can use. What's the language? Price. Price, and are people buying or selling at such a price? Advantages of prices. It's clear. By raising prices or lowering prices, it's clear to both buyer and seller valuation. Okay? They're an incentive to buy or not to buy. And both the buyer and the seller can determine, do I want to produce more? Do I not want to at given the particular price? It encourages or discourages production based on how many people are buying. Consider a price like traffic light. Traffic light tells you when to go, when to stop. When the price is right, it's like a green light. When the price is wrong, stop. When you're not sure about the price, yellow light, check it out, then come back to it. In other words, do some research. Know whether you're getting a good price or not. But if the prices are too low, sometimes it's for a reason. Picture an empty restaurant. It's probably empty for a reason because it's not good. Consider a packed restaurant. It's probably packed for a reason. It's good, but then you got to wait longer. So it's a trade-off. All right? And eventually they're going to be able to charge more. Maybe they don't need to because they make it up with volume. Flexibility. In many markets, prices are more flexible than production levels. Prices can be easily increased or decreased to solve problems of excess supply or excess demand. Get a thing known as supply shock, where you get a sudden shortage of a good. To fix this sudden supply shock, I think the toilet paper during the pandemic is the perfect example. Eventually, they're going to produce more of a good. In the short term, it wasn't possible. In the long term, it was. And you might also have rationing of the good. This is not popular when you go and they only say you can get one of this or one of that. But it happens. They did it with the toilet paper because they didn't want it to become too crazy. And they wanted customers being happy, at least as many not too unhappy as possible. And eventually you can raise the price of the good, but there'll be limits on that. You raise it up too high, people will start to rebel. And France, they raised the price of bread so high, people revolted and ended up chopping off the king and queen's head. But it's not really free. The price system is free, but the products are not free. What do you mean? Well, unlike central planning, a distribution system is based on price costs, nothing to administer. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to have some agency. All you have to do is let the market do what it's going to do. People buy or sell as they're so inclined. It's not free because you still have to regulate it. And usually there's a catch. How many government officials would it take to change a price in North Korea? At least a few. How many government officials does it take to regulate the price of a Denny's Grand Slam? No one. They're going to give you a free Grand Slam, but I'm sure there's fine print. I'm sure there's limited hours. I'm sure you got to buy a drink. I'm sure it's like one per party or something like that. Something. They had, I think IHOP had a 99-cent pancake deal on their anniversary. I think that's a thing. And so, by the time you had coffee and bacon or whatever, you're talking, it's not so free, or even feels like $1, but it's still a good deal. But let's look. Maybe the visual will show us it's not actually even free. What does it say? Tuesday, February 3rd from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Here's the problem. Most people work. Is it going to work everywhere? No, it looks like Merced, California and Baker, California, but it's not everywhere. Limited locations. So they invited America for a limited window, and they only say while supplies last. Sorry, I'm done giving out free stuff. Supplies are now over. So the answer is yeah, it's free, but there are limits with time and date. The notion that there's no free lunches is somewhat true. Let's look at this in greater detail. Denny's in Baker, California. La Cruces, New Mexico, Merceco. Only for dining. Sorry, if there's a Lodi one, no. Sorry, if there's a Stockton one, no. Sorry, if there's an Elk Grove or Sacramento one, no. So if you can make it to one of those three places during a time when most of America is at work, sure, we'll hook you up for free. In other words, you're trying to be flexible, but sometimes when you're too flexible, it can hurt. So really, it's about efficient resource allocation. Like a market system ensures that resources uh, go to the uses that consumers value most highly. So if people value your service, whether it's a chiropractor, whether it's a delivery service, they'll spend on it. If they don't, they won't. The market problems are when you get imperfect competition. Because if you have imperfect competition, say Amazon is dominating sales and delivery of at-home book orders, and they want to run the competition out of the business, and they do well enough in their other enterprises, they could take a loss in their book division for years and still be okay. Because eventually, when they drive every other competitor out of the market, or most of them, what they'll do is jack up their own prices to make up for all the money they lost. So we don't really want one supplier to dominate and have imperfect competition because we're worried about future prices. Even though in the short term it might be a benefit to us, long term prices can be a problem. And I personally don't trust that Amazon won't jack up the prices on us someday. So, yeah. And they really did drive out Walden Books, um, Barnes and Noble. I don't think they exist anymore, either one. Those used to be major retailers of books. Then you got something known as spillover costs. These are externalities, side effects, just like with the public good. But here you're talking, um, how does production affect the rest of the world? Social responsibility, and it could spill over into air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, and people have no control over how much of a good is produced. Um, and these side costs, these external costs, can be pretty high. I mean, to bring water to LA, you could ruin a lakefront properties, and that pretty much happened. If buyers and sellers have this imperfect information, it could also lead to people getting tricked. That's why the sticker price on a car was required. That way, everyone gets the MPG as well as the price, and so you can have comparisons that are reasonable and published, and you have to be held accountable for them. So, if you get imperfect information on a product, you may not make the best purchasing or selling decision because they're misleading. Like if you buy a car and you don't know if it's got a cracked block, that could really cost you a lot of money. Let's get this quiz done and call it quits. It's been an extra long video session. Equilibrium is perfect pricing for quantity and supply, while disequilibrium imperfect pricing. Government controls prices with ceilings and floors. Prices allow the market to quickly regulate demand and supply. It's responsive to those things. I'm going to add 10 points to this overall thing, and that 10 points is going to be on just that graph. All right, that's going to add 10 points to the overall value again. And that'll conclude the slide show. I hope what you've been given was helpful to you. I think overall these notes are going to be highly helpful to you in your learning, but also highly valuable as a score. So I hope I made the video clear for you. Let me know if you have any questions. That wraps it up. Peace.